So pretty recently, the Elder Scrolls series celebrated its 30th anniversary. 30 whole years since the release of the Elder Scrolls Arena, and the whole idea terrifies me in a way. I thought I could celebrate the occasion a few weeks late, as today we see if you can beat Skyrim as the Eternal Champion. So how exactly do you beat Skyrim as the Eternal Champion? Frankly, good question. I could have done Skyrim in VR because of the whole awkward controls of the first game, but I'm not really in the mood to pay over $300 for a VR headset I will only use once, along with Skyrim for the 4th time. The hardest part about the run is just coming up with rules for the challenge, since the champion is a blank slate protagonist without much going on. I mean, how exactly do we expect a character and focus around this? Well, the only rule for the challenge I could come up with is that all overworld combat has to be done on horseback. No weapon restrictions, since besides a few more variations of the weapons, the Elder Scrolls series has remained rather consistent for the most part when it comes to weapon variety. If you've watched some of my other runs, you will know just how powerful horses are, solving basically every overworld problem, and I guess also the usual sub-goals and no major glitches or companion. The whole no weapon restrictions is actually vital for the bonus objectives today, as since the Elder Scrolls Arena took place across all of Tamriel, this includes the province of Skyrim. I would have to discover all the forts, but the main one is that one of the magic MacGuffins required to beat Arena is in Labyrinthian. So I guess we'll be doing the Mage's Guild questline today. Also, the Mage's Guild of Skyrim is important to that arc also. As for Labyrinthian, I'll have to clear out the main dungeon, Shalador's Labyrinth, and Lost Volskag. No idea which area the champion went through, so we're going to cover our bases and doing all 3. Also, since I have the anniversary installed, I'll be doing the Arms of Chaos quest also, though it ties very little to Arena, but oh well. With that all out of the way, let's get started. So when creating my character, there is no definitive lore on what the champion looked like, or even what race they were, but I went with an Imperial male and named him Talon, as that was what the character was named in the instructional booklet of Arena. Imperial because he was once a member of the Imperial Court before being sent to a dungeon to die. Oh look, we're skipping the dungeon part and skipping right to die! Never mind. Going through the intro blazing set piece, I blitzed right through the streets and went in with Hadvar this time. Mostly because I want to side with the Imperials this playthrough, though I don't plan on going to war. Also, escaping with Hadvar is the harder of the 2 options because, oh boy, there's a lot of two-handed users in the intro, and I take quite a beating trying to get out. I decided to fight my way out this time instead of streaking on through, since I'm not bound to a weapon restriction. Anyways, I bonked the skulls on the Stormcloaks before I'm out in the non-procedurally generated world. On my way to my horse, I decided to make a couple stops on the side. First stop was the Warrior Stone, gotta level up faster, and also I hit up Emershard Mines. Some hero has to put the bandits through their steps. Here I decided to focus on the Warhammer because for some reason the idea of hitting someone over the head with a giant hammer appealed to me. Once that was all done and dusted, I stopped at Riverwood to gather some equipment and sell my loot. You know, the classic gameplay loop, before heading out to gather more supplies. By supplies, I mean robbing Khajiits of their underground chests. I want a head start to speed up the run a little bit faster. Once I was all prepped and got a couple enchantments, nothing too fun this time around, I warped back to Whiterun, legally obtained a horse, yeah, legally, and made my way up to Bleak Falls Barrow. Once I got to the tower, I tested out horseback combat, and it exists. Bandits though, not so much. I parked my horse at the entrance, didn't want to get my horse killed, and entered the dungeon. For the most part, the barrow goes about how it normally goes, just with extra force. As for the frostbite spider, I do just about what any sane person would do and stand right in front of the spider's mouth. It goes down, and before too long I'm giving Arvel the 1-2 bonk. I do switch over to an oversized axe for a little bit to give it a whirl, faster swing speed and all that, but I just went back to raw power. Eventually I'm at the Draugr Overlord. Yeah, he didn't even finish getting out of bed before going down, just like me in the morning. With that all done, I enter Whiterun to tell the guards that the Emperor is in an alternate dimension. He ignores me but lets me into the town anyways. I spend some time gaining supplies in the town. The real treasure was on the Jarl, who had a couple of really good accessories. Always worth robbing the rich. Anyways, I tell the Jarl that a dragon attacked Helgen and he trusts me enough to take a squadron of guards to go kill another dragon. With my business in town concluded, I ride on my legalish steed to the watchtower. As for the first dragon, I found out my horse can bully dragons. More than makes up for my more recent runs. My first attempt at the dragon, I get very zealous in my fighting and I get flung by the physics engine. Second attempt, I play things more cautiously instead of planting my horse next to the dragon. It got results and I have a dragon soul in my belly. Well, with my business in Whiterun done, I thought I could take the scenic route down to Rifton since I thought I could get better horses and more importantly, a legal one. I made sure to pay the toll of 1 bonk, then continue down the road. Besides being the average oversized pickup truck driver and hitting the wildlife, nothing really of note happened. Well, besides killing a bard and running away from the scene. Could be anyone's hoofprints. On my way to Rifton, I did hit up a couple of forts for the bonus objective, along with the Dwemer dungeon that I'll have to visit later on in the run. Otherwise, I entered Rifton, butted heads with Grillod, and started a quest to get a new set of hooves. I talked to Lewis in the Bee and Barb to start Promises to Keep. I entered the Keep's jail and got info from Sibby. Now I can raid the Blackbriar Lodge. I borrowed a horse and ran into the place. Here I was met with some mercs with pretty good armor. I had to chase them down in order to get them. They were wearing a nice upgrade over my existing gear, so I take it. As for the lodge, I just kept swinging in a general direction until nothing was left. I take the legal papers for myself, then take my new ride out for a spin. I talk to Lewis, who wants a horse. I say no and I just run him over. You see, I'm not very good about promises. Want proof? Just look at my Let's Play bonus video completion rate. With my business in Rifton concluded for now, I think now is a good time to go climb to High Rothgar. Since I have a horse, I just take the mountain path. By that, I mean making a path up the mountain by myself. Here I talk to those who probably know the other Eternal Champion, yell at ghosts, then go outside. Instead of doing things the intended way, I just answer with horse. It works, and at this point, I put off the main story for a long while, since I got bonus objectives to do. So next stop is Winterhold, and instead of being smart and taking a carriage, instead I do the dumb thing, so the normal Orph thing, and rode all the way from Rifton to Winterhold. I would go into detail on this long ride, but honestly, not much happened in the journey. Along the way, I do get jumped by ice wolves, but I just hoofed it over the mountain. Here I grabbed Castav and finished my ride to Winterhold. Honestly, it was not very long of a ride. The older you get and the more you play a game, the smaller the world feels. Inside Winterhold, I immediately used the power of the hammer to drive in the cultist skulls. I don't even think they saw it coming, to be honest. I used the second most overpowered way to level Alteration to enter the college, and I take a grand tour. I struggle with the ward because I haven't put a single point in Restoration or Magic, but eventually I'm a full member and now I can explore an ancient city. Before I head to Sarthal, I take a detour for a couple of reasons. My first stop was to get the Arms of Chaos quest started. I don't know where the quest normally starts, but I know that the midpoint is, so I just rush there. Inside the ruins just north of the college is Sky Temple Ruins. Here there is a lot of Skelly Boys, but more importantly, the Arms of the Sun and Moon. No chaos, but chaos is the brain part. I also forget to get the necklace, but oh well, I got it after backtracking. We'll totally get back to this soon. While I was in the neighborhood and my brain can remember stuff for once, I head to Septimus, after telling a Horker who's boss. I got my keys to Aftan, so once I'm done with Sarthal, I can do to Aftan. Totally. We'll see about that. I return to Winterhold and try to my way to Sarthal. Fun fact, on my first playthrough, I killed Shadowmere here because I fell from a great height into Sarthal. I am so good with horses. As for Sarthal, it played out pretty similarly to my last run. Grab a necklace, break ancient architecture, then blast away at Draugr. Being undead doesn't do much to strengthen skulls. In the second half of the dungeon, something exploded with all the Draugr and myself with a fireball, and Tolfdir wasn't around. Eventually, after more Draugr and Mindbenders, I had my first bout with the Draugr right. It hits hard, but eventually I come out on top. As for the later parts of Sarthal, I tank my way through the traps, solve an even harder puzzle in my first attempt, then fight Jarek. Way easier of a fight compared to his brothers. Just had to play around a chair until I chopped him up to size. With that all done, I see a giant ball, and I can proceed to the next quest in college. After that was done, I was outside, I abandoned all pre-planned activities, returned to the college to get a quest to get overdue library books. Back in Whiterun, I do some enchantments, got some smithing done, then departed to my next dungeon, except a dragon decided to play. Yeah, with this much power, the drive-by went by, and I made it to Felglow Keep. This dungeon isn't nice to the warrior, and the first Ice Mage does get me pretty close to death, but waiting patiently has its merits. I let the vampires out of their cage to lead an army against their captors. I let Orthorn out of his cage, only to offer him up to the caller. Except the agreement didn't go to plan. Besides taking damage, the fight wasn't too hard, and eventually we put our heads together to solve the problem. I went through a lot of supplies, so I made a pit stop back in Whiterun to get more potions. I have a Dwarven dungeon coming up next, so I want to be very prepared. I return to the college, look at a magic ball, go into the college via the teacher's lounge due to the glowing orb, and the sphere tells me to grab the Staff of Magnus. Suddenly, every weapon restricted challenge is in shambles. I relay the news to the Archmage, and now I have to go to a Dwarven dungeon. Totally my second one. So, Miss Volft is a pretty long Dwarven dungeon, and all I wrote down here in my notes is slog. Yeah, the dungeon is a slog. Well, Dwarven dungeons in general are slogs, but this dungeon takes it to the extreme. It's a boring dungeon full of Dwarven spiders until it opens up to a Falmer crypt, and the Chars Hunter ambushed me and really laid on the hurt. Seriously, these guys suck. More Chars and I'm back to Dwarven ruins. At least they have a lot of soul gems for enchanting. I really wish there was more I could say, but this is probably the most bland dungeon in Skyrim. Eventually it becomes a generic polymer crypt, so I have to slowly carve my way right through them. So I'm bashing through hallways right out of arena, and I'm at the end, and I'm in a copy-pasted room from the Elder Scrolls room. Except I forgot about the Elder Scroll. Here I have to apply some hot and cold treatment until all the lights are lined up, then push buttons until I get my location in Labyrinthian. After nearly 30 minutes, I am free from this dungeon. Remind me to never diss Aftan ever again. There are much worse dungeons out there. Back at the college, Arcano channels the power into the ball and blasted Savos into the afterlife, and things are going out of control. Winterhold is under attack by 11 forces. Well, there are 10 glowing balls I have to play polo with, and a dragon joined in on the hunt. Since I didn't want Frost to fall, I just played this fight like a jousting match of charging through the streets and plucking away one at a time. I had some help from the dragon and some NPCs, and eventually the streets are free. Well, except for the dragon, but eventually I bonked it into my belly. So with the Draugr hellhole that is probably the hardest or second hardest dungeon in the game next, I decided to journey to Ustengrav, but I decided to ride there instead. The first place I hit up is Labyrinthian, so when I get the balls to go there, I can just fast travel there. After that I hit up Morthal and the Fort Snowhawk, so another fort off the lift. And after all that riding is done, I bonk on some spiders and necromancers, then begin Ustengrav. Inside Ustengrav I bonked on the welcoming parties and even bonked in a necromancer who came to me. Otherwise, Ustengrav is pretty short dungeon all things considered. I take the time to bash everyone here, it's just for experience. I break the Skelly Bowie's bones, grab my ethereal shout that I love to use, glitch through the gates, and squish some spiders. With that all done, I learned I wasted my time in this filler dungeon, then left Ustengrav. Got the horse to take the stairs on the way out, which is nice. At this point, I do a lot of wandering around, like in my notes I have, Orph wanders around mindlessly for an hour while thinking about what to do next. So basically how I play most games. In my journeys, I do wander into Dragon's Bridge, use a mallet on a Khajiit, and made my way up to Fort Heragsstag. Here I do bonk in an Ice Wolf and some bandits. I decided at this point to do Volskag, and by do Volskag, I just climbed the mountainside and claimed the word wall for myself, skipping the entire dungeon, but at least I'm smart enough not to fight the Dragon Priest somehow. Next up in my aimless wandering, I thought I could ride to Markarth next, taking the scenic route there. More or less, there really wasn't much interesting on the ride. In Karthwagen, I immediately made the courier regret his actions. Since I was in the area, I thought I could help out the townsfolk. By help, I mean carving the Silverblood's merc. I watched someone smith on some barrels and get some money. Keep it jank, Skyrim. After this, I rode to Markarth and carved in the attacker. After that was all done, I rode through the tundra on a horse with a name, wandering pretty far until I hit Fort Sungard. I bonked in a saber cat along the way, and that made me feel good. I made it to Rurikstead, then walked back to the Western Watchtower to get Greymoor. Just a couple more locations left, so I did the long ride to Falkreath. I do bonk in an assassin along the way, probably should get to that at some point. Eventually in my long ride I finally made it to Falkreath, and after that I returned to Helgen so I can make it to Ivarstead. In my ride to Ivarstead, besides finding Newgrad, I decided to go after some cheese. This is me we're talking about. And I have the Anniversary Edition, which is basically pay to win. And I don't have any armory section, so I thought I could go for one of the best armors in the game. Like, it's sitting right there. Close to Arcwind Point is a dead adventure and probably the most dangerous place in Skyrim, or really high up there for overworld standards. I borrow someone's horse, like it was right there. I climb the mountainside that looks easily climbable, and in the Draugr area I do my best to avoid the Deathlord spawn. I bonked in the Draugr here, taking a horse up the tower, and at the very top is a dead adventurer in a full set of Dragonplate armor. A gigantic upgrade over what I already have. Indeed, pay to win. With that all done, I returned to my frosty horse and rode all the way to Ivarstead, then returned to Dawnstar for the last couple of locations. Here I rode south quite a ways until I hit Dunstad. Since I was in the area, I decided to grab the Lord Stone for added protection given my soon-to-be fate. After that was done, I carefully descended to Stone Hills, which is the last location of my side objective, so yay? Inside Whiterun, I gave Nazim the Horny Bonk, then grabbed as many potions as I can since I'll be doing Labyrinthian very soon. Rip off the Band-Aid now. I enchanted an Orcish Warhammer I found. I returned to Riverwood and talked to Delphine in an inconspicuous location. As for Selicanir, I wish I could go into detail about the fight, but I parked right next to the worm and it goes down very easily. Then again, Big Mallet works well on dragons. Like it barely got its scales back before it went down. A good gauge on your DPS at this point in the game. After that was done, I returned to Solitude and proceeded to make Malborn my pack mule, unloading nearly everything on him. I say nearly everything because I was a little klepto this run. With that all done, I got my party clothes on and entered the embassy to get my stuff back. There is something oddly satisfying about using a giant hammer on smug high elves. In the courtyard, I just walked into the Solar and one-shot Rulindel. Honestly surprised I was able to bonk him with ease. Things got interesting in the jail as when I read the letter, immediately attacked the elves as they came in, and somehow I killed Malborn while out of bounds. I popped back in reality and killed the guards. I did find Malborn's body in the middle of the floor. I killed the prisoner for crumbs of experience, and I even took out the frost troll thanks to the power of fire. I returned back to the inn and tell Delphian the good news. With that all done, I decided now is the time to do Labyrinthian. I just left my horse outside the establishment so I have a ride after the dungeon, then walked into hell. Labyrinthian is a very long dungeon, one of the longest in the game. First big room is a giant skeleton dragon who I carved in pretty easily, all things considered. I did take lots of damage and I did level up at this point. Hopefully I get another one before the boss. I went through the big room taking out all the skeletons before heading further inside. Inside the second zone, I did have to use fire to melt the door to get in, so I guess another point of weapon restriction runs unable to do the college questline. Here I meet a few wights who hit pretty hard. I wanted to play things safe here. In the next zone there were a lot of trolls here, and thankfully they were pretty easy thanks to flamethrowers. After the trolls were trolled, I carved my way through the fort and fought a Wisp Mother. I honestly forgot they existed, and they are pretty difficult too, but the best way to deal with mages, even if they clone themselves, is just get right in front of their faces and spam attack until they go down. Well, that just describes the entire Elder Scrolls series. After that was a fire door, so it needed to freeze it out. Close to the end of the dungeon, I deal with Roggers who ingested one too many glow sticks. I do find a Drain Battle Axe, but they only have one charge. I thought I could have an Ebony Sword experience again, but I guess not. Back to the hammer. Close to the end of the dungeon, I met with a Draugr Deathlord, and this guy hits pretty hard, besides disarming me, which I hate about these guys. Thankfully, I get a level up on this guy right before he goes down, so I'm safe for the Dragon Priest. I am very much dreading the Dragon Priest here, reason I've been dragging my feet. I kill the ghost, protecting Mordecai, and I drag the Dragon Priest to me. I will just play out the fight. Mordecai was an absolute joke. On my way out I met one of Chronos' friends, but a few headbutts put him in his place. With that all done, I thought I could clear out the other two dungeons of Labyrinthian since I was in the area. First up is Shalador's Maze. I say maze, but it's really two very absurdly long hallways, but you just need to use the staves to open the doors. I could go into detail about the wanderings, but it's really not worth it. Just hold W and move around your mouse and you're at the end. Skipping to the boss of this place, he was a joke, but I guess mages are indeed weak to brute force. And lastly, I hit up Volskag. Volskag is frankly one of the hardest dungeons at a low level. Why? Deathlords spawn here at any level. The dungeon itself is pretty short, and before too long I met with the first of two Deathlords who swept me off my feet and shoved 2 arrows in my butt, killing me with ease. Second attempt, I played things smart using becoming ethereal, getting close to his face, spamming healing until eventually the first Deathlord goes down. Ebony is really strong at my level. I grabbed the loot. Second Deathlord wasn't as bad. I just played smart until it went down, and had an Ebony Warhammer now. A match made in heaven. With my business in Labyrinthian done, I returned to college. Back at the College of Winterhold, I used the Staff of Magnus to blast down the barrier and get inside to kill Arcano. Arcano is a pathetic boss. Like, if he didn't run away, I could have one-cycled him. Instead, he ran back to the eye to regain invincibility. While using the staff on him, I did get a death cam, even if I can't actually do any damage to him, so that was fun. He ended up punching me with his fist after I reclosed the eye, so I obliged and used my own fist to punch him to death. With that all done, the college is saved, the eye gets relocated, and that side objective is done. So I guess now is a good time to take care of some side objectives before finishing the run. First stop in Windhelm is talking to our Ventus for later, as a side trip. Once that was done, I wandered into the East Empire Company to read a letter because Creation Club content. So next stop will be getting a ring from a ship. I wanted to check to see how deep it is. On my way there, I killed a snow saber cat, so I'm feeling very confident in my abilities. The ship is super deep in water, so I'm going to need to find a way to breathe underwater. So the smart thing would be to craft a water breathing potion. However, I am not smart, so instead I decided to kill a dragon priest. I returned to Volskag, and turns out the dragon priest here has a snorkel set, so I decided to kill it. Surprisingly, it wasn't that bad of a fight. It seems to have some targeting issues, as it would not engage me until after I bonked it in a couple times. Volsung was not really too bad, did get a well-timed level up and a clip to escape his powerful attacks. I continued to bash away until it died. I grabbed my mask, returned to the ship, put it on and dove into the abyss to grab my ring, and then I warped out. Back at the ruins, I ran into a summoning circle. I had no idea what it was until just now. I got on my horse and repeatedly bashed through more until the game said stop, and then I grabbed my sigil stones so I can proceed to the final part of the quest, and that is going to be going to a staff enchanter. Since I'm not in the mood to play Dragonborn, instead I indulged in pay-to-win features and headed to Mistwatch. I lit a fire on the floor and the door was unlocked. I went upstairs, crafted a couple of staves and a ring, and concluded that quest about the Staves of Chaos without being the Staff of Chaos. Boring! So with my business concluded here, I walked outside, got very intimate with the courier, went back to bed, and proceeded to bash an asteroid. It's been a while since my last Dark Brotherhood rampage, so I need to make up for lost time. I get the password from Morrow, silence, meaning kill every last one of them. So I went through, cleaned out the sanctuary for a nice two-handed experience. I returned to Martin and got my 3,000 gold reward. I used the gold to get armor for my horse and get shamed by 2006 standards. So with that all done, next stop is the Ratways. Oh yeah, legal murder. On my way I decided to do the ghost quest down here, because I haven't done that quest before and I keep on seeing it, so I gave it a go. Here I'm in a reskinned Thieves Guild sanctuary, and the place is basically a bunch of bosses. Things were interesting in the final room as I had a lot of skeletons and a guardian that hit pretty hard. With the power of brute force, I carved my way through the forces until eventually I get my reward in Dusk/Dawnfang. You know, I should have stopped down here when I was doing the Sheogorath run, my favorite Oblivion weapon. With that all done, it's been a moment, so time to resume unbridled slaughter of Thalmor wizards. In the Warrens, I turned a chef into a pancake, and Heffid was in full panic mode, so I spared her. Esbern, on the other hand, really wanted her dead. More high elves, more two-handed experience, and one terrifying Esbern later, we made our escape out of the Ratways. Except Skyrim has to Skyrim and crashed as we exit. Nice. Back in Riverwood, I get a good look at what a credit card does to you. Set my ebony warhammer on fire so it's extra deadly. Next stop is Skyhaven Temple. On my way there, I was stopped by a couple of dragons, first being the usual blood variant, and I think either a regular red or even maybe an ancient, I don't know, flew on by. I had legendary dragons attack in the 50s before. The blood dragon wasn't much of a threat, besides at one point I was riding a horse riding a dragon, but thankfully my steed didn't die when it fell down, and I can claim a dragon soul. Besides becoming one with the bridge, I just ran through wiping out all the Forsworn here. As for the dungeon, I inserted the password of 212, inflicted 1 point of damage to myself after rolling a natural 1, then went inside Skyhaven Temple. I tried to find my past self on the wall, couldn't really see him out, Numidium was taking up a lot of space as usual. Then I proceeded into the endgame, but before that, I finally remembered Aftan was a thing. I do highly question my mental stability. Inside the Fortress of Ice, I decided today I could take a more casual time, and instead of sprinting through the place, I would take my time swatting at the robots. Inside the second portion of Aftan, I actually take the intended way through the place. Oh my god, for the first time ever. Maybe this was where I thought Aftan took forever. Just a lot of Falmer, a lot of swatting like flies. Eventually I'm back in familiar territory and I can get into the depths. As for the final part of the dungeon, I decided to lay into the Centurion and it goes down with little issue. I am very strong for this point in the game. I also get a sneak attack on one of the humans at the bottom. As for Blackreach, I decided to do my usual route through the place, and before the tower, I find another Centurion. I really felt that. Well, since I had an easy time in Blackreach, I decided to go fight the Secret Dragon. I have 2 Dragon Priests slain already. I just hammered my way through the humans in Falmer, rang the dinner bell, then fought the dragon. So, funny thing about dragons, it's fire elemented, and my armor has 100% fire resistance, so that means the dragon can't do much to me besides bite at me. Sure, it has a lot of health, which means more whacking away than usual, but I played Whack a Dragon and it goes down. I celebrate the occasion by grabbing my favorite collectible, toilet paper, and left the place. With that all done, I got an earful from the Greybeards, used my horse to learn how to yell at clouds so I don't get soft locked in the endgame, then rode said horse up a mountain. I talked to Izumi Parthenax, then pulled out the toilet paper so I can go to the bathroom. As for Alduin, the fight wasn't difficult, it was more tedious than anything. So for me to damage Alduin, I have to get off my horse, use Dragon Rend, which I missed often, and aim, remember? Try to hit Alduin, which my attacks missed quite often, then walked away until the second half of the fight when Alduin brought out the meteors. The hardest part of the entire fight was the point making sure Frost doesn't run off, because like real life horses, they would get spooked if meteors rained from the sky. Dumb Horse ran face first into the Frost field. Thankfully it didn't die. Eventually Alduin was grounded for good, so I didn't have to chase down my dumb horse. Really, if I had better aim, this fight would have been way easier. With the dragon booped into the afterlife, I can go ahead with the endgame. So, for the 10-minute pointless cutscene nobody likes, I just gave the Empire all the spoils because I hate Ulfric. Once the meeting was all done, Ulfric had a temper tantrum because I traded one major hold for another. I let everyone go outside, I saved beforehand, lined up all my least favorite non-DLC characters, then shouted them off the mountain. Sure, this might have been against the rules, but that just felt good. I reloaded to right before my sabotage, returned to Whiterun, called my flying horse, and rode to Skuldolphin. As for Skuldolphin, I didn't have my horse here, so I played it like a normal dungeon since it's basically a glorified 4-part dungeon. I bashed my way through the welcoming committee, and before too long I'm inside the dungeon. More Draugr skulls, puzzle solving, and Draugr overlords later, I am back outside. Since I have 2 Dragon Priest masks in my pocket, what's one more to my collection? I just sprinted right at the priest, pressed my mouse button until he finally gets to his staff, and by that time he was already ground to dust. I got my mask and entered Sovngarde. Here I just ran right through the place, practicing my batting on the unsuspecting soldiers. And here Alduin was wanting a snack, but I flew it away like the fly it is. As for Soon, I tried to be cheeky and get a sneak attack. Well, Soon was a joke in like 2 seconds he was done for already, and I could go into the Hall of Valor. I get my escorts that I don't need today, not even soon, for Alduin. At this point, the run is done. This Alduin fight goes by way better. Well, I whiffed 1 Dragon Rend instead of 5 like last fight, but oh well. Once the World Eater landed, his fate was all but sealed. Well, I accidentally hit an Imperial soldier, but oh well. I just spammed left mouse button, since I'm immune to fire more or less. Dragonbone armor, the entire fight went by super quickly, and before too long the dragon got hammered and subsequently disintegrated, and proving that yes, you can beat Skyrim as the Eternal Champion. Well, that was an interesting run, a little longer than usual. This run just went and proved that horses are just overpowered from being able to skip dungeons to breaking AI and transcending gravity. And I did not even get into horse tilting. Watch the Skyrim speedrun to see how absurd that is. Overall, this run wasn't too bad. Surprisingly, the Dragon Priests weren't that bad considering they are some of the hardest enemies in the game. But I guess Dragonbone armor you get for free is busted. But I enjoyed breaking Skyrim. This will probably be the only time I will be able to do the College of Winterhold questline, given how you require Frost, Fire, Magic, whatever spell to enter the college, a ward, and the Staff of Magnus. Weapon restriction runs are in shambles for the college. This has been Orpheolus. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to hit the like button, subscribe for more insanity as we're getting pretty close to 1,000 subscribers, and if there's any ideas on how I could torture myself, leave them down in the comments. See you all in the next one.